Today's episode was sponsored by Incogni.
You have 20 minutes to respond.
Hey guys, Willie here, and when you do what I do, you need to protect your identity however you can. That's why when I'm on the job, I like to keep my face covered. There's one place I go to every day though where my identity is always at risk, and that's the internet. And unfortunately, staying safe on there isn't as simple as wearing a mask. Thankfully, there's today's sponsor, Incogni. Anytime you go online, you're exposing yourself in all sorts of ways that you probably don't even realize, and that can lead to...
Hey Mom, it's Willie.
Excuse me, I have to take
It happened
this.
again.
Have you made your decision?
Damn it, it's a robocall. Rude. And you know, if I had used Incogni, that wouldn't have been an issue. The fact of the matter is that if you're getting robocalls, odds are you're not protecting yourself online as much as you could be. Generally speaking, the reason that robocalls happen is data brokers, who are just a villainous bunch. Anytime you do anything online, there's a chance you're leaving behind all sorts of information about yourself. And data brokers are constantly taking that information and selling it to a bunch of companies who use it to contact you, even when you wish that they wouldn't. Once you're on a data broker's list, they're required to remove you from it if you ask them to. But unfortunately, there's so many of them and they're so hard to contact that doing that on your own is damn near impossible. And that's where Incogni comes in. Basically, you just tell Incogni a little bit about yourself and then you sit back while they take care of the rest. Or if you want to take a more active role, you can use Incogni's new custom removals feature, where if you happen to see your name on a list it shouldn't be, you can send the link to Incogni directly and they'll handle it for you. Right now, Incogni is offering my viewers 60% off on an annual plan, so follow my link in the description below and use code WillieMuse to start taking control of your personal data today. There are a lot of scary people out there, but thanks to Incogni, I can feel confident that one place they won't be is on my phone.
Hey Mom, it's
Speaking of which...
It happened again.
Tick-tock, Mr. Prime Minister.
A while back, I was playing around on YouTube's Creator Studio, and I noticed a feature that I had never seen before. It seems that they've now started using AI to scan what's done well for you, and suggest video ideas based on that. And their suggestions are a mixed bag, let's say. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, here are a few titles the computer came up with. Unpacking cringe culture in media, knitting, ranking the most absurdly specific Lost Male Christmas movie plots, and deconstructing the Trojan horsemen of the apocalypse in faith-based cinema. And I'm not gonna lie, that last one did pique my interests enough that I Googled Trojan horsemen of the apocalypse to see what it is, and apparently, it's nothing. For reasons I don't fully understand, they seem to have just combined Trojan horse with the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and apparently they believe that I should be the one to discuss how that made-up concept relates to faith-based cinema. And you know, I have a lot of opinions on this, to the point that I don't even know where to start. Should I talk about how stuff like this is making art infinitely worse? Should I complain about the amount of energy being used to fuel a tool that is wholly unnecessary? Should I make fun of how truly terrible all of their titles are? No, I don't want to risk making the algorithm mad at me, so instead I decided to just take one of their suggestions. Because the truth is that one of them did catch my eye. Why this faith-based streaming series is unwatchable. I can't even pretend like they didn't get my ass on that one. That's absolutely a video I would make. Also, in my experience, when this site tells you to do something, it usually pays off to do it. So I figured, why not? And got to work making that computer-generated title into a reality. Unfortunately, it was not long before I ran into a roadblock. Because here's the thing. They didn't tell me what faith-based streaming series I should talk about. Actually, no, that's not true. They did, but it's not one that actually exists. Based on the thumbnail they generated, they wanted me to talk about a show that was actually called faith-based, apparently starring someone named Wes Blaling Reason as the titular character, faith-based. And believe me, if I could watch every episode of that show, I absolutely would. If only to see how this little buckethead fellow fits into the plot. Unfortunately though, there's no show to watch, so if I was gonna make a video called Why This Faith-Based Streaming Series is Unwatchable, I'd have to find the faith-based streaming series myself. So I googled faith-based streaming series, even though the more I say that, the more I feel like that's not really a thing an actual human would say. And I quickly came across something called .Connor Webtective, which sounded perfect. Connor is the world's first webtective, a detective who uses the internet to solve mysteries. I'm not sure she's the only one who does that. I feel like that's probably true of a lot of detectives. And in Dot's experience, there are no bigger mysteries than the question she has about her Christian faith. So yeah, now I'm gonna go watch every episode of this series. It's a full 88 minutes of television. And once I do that, I'm gonna try to make a video I will hopefully be able to call Why This Faith-Based Streaming Series is Unwatchable without raising too many eyebrows. Fingers crossed it's unwatchable. Good news! It is. The show is exactly what the synopsis said it was. Somehow. It follows protagonist Dot Connor as she uses the internet to solve faith-based mysteries. Actually, no, the mysteries aren't so much faith-based as the solutions are. Also, she doesn't so much use the internet as she's just on it while she solves her mysteries. It's designed to make you feel like you're watching a web series that's being hosted by a teenage girl when she gets home from school, which is exactly as engaging as it sounds.
Y'all, I've been working so hard this year to get a perfect grade in math. And, well, I just got my latest test back. It's not good.
Alright, not gonna lie, right now I'm mostly just pissed off that this 12-year-old has better production value than me. I mean, look at her. She's in frame and everything. Although honestly, I don't feel too bad because this spunky tween clearly has a very good production team behind her. Her editor in particular is pretty impressive. And possibly psychic.
I know, I should be happy with this grade. And I am happy, really. Except, well, it's still not a perfect grade. And y'all know I've taken every personality test available and always score a perfectionist with a wing of perfectionist.
Based on the fact that she's interacting with the chat, Dot appears to be doing a live stream right now.
Okay, It's Joey 13 says, don't worry, Dot, nobody's perfect.
But they still managed to have the words she's currently saying flash on screen as she says them, which is not an easy feat. No offense to Dot Connor, but whoever managed to pull that off is wasting their talents working on whatever this is.
Well, it's Joey 13. That's the question, isn't it? I mean, are we so certain that there's never been anyone who was perfect?
It's gonna be Jesus, isn't it? You're gonna jump through a bunch of hoops just to come to the conclusion that it's Jesus.
What if there was? Then they could probably help me figure out how. I feel a mystery coming on.
God help me, we're still less than 2 minutes in. Are they possibly gonna stretch this reveal out for that long?
You know what that means. We've got a case to crack.
Okay, first off, no, I don't know what that means. This is the first episode. And second, I feel like you're using the term case a little loosely there. I don't think it counts as a mystery if you think you can find the answer on Google. I think that's just a question.
Looks like we've got a missing persons case on our hands. We need to find a perfect person so they can help me know how to score a perfect grade in math. The first step in solving a mystery like this is research. The internet is a great place to start, but we've got to be careful with where we look, because not everything on the internet can be trusted. Wait, what? All of these links are about finding the perfect person to love. That's not what I want at all. Ew!
And you have the gall to call yourself a web detective. Also, apparently she wears a special hat while she solves her mysteries. I don't have much to say on that, but I figured I'd point it out because it is currently my favorite part of the series. After Googling for, Jesus Christ, 45 seconds. This is going to be the longest 12 minutes of my life. But after Googling for 45 seconds, Dot realizes that the closest thing she's likely to find to someone who's achieved perfection is an athlete. So she meets up with her friend to find one and interview him, so she can figure out how to get a perfect score on her math test. Oh God, I still have 7 of these to watch after this.
Hey everybody, I've got Michaela, my fellow investigator,
Best friend.
with me and we're at a professional sport training and exercise facility
A practice field.
to meet a professional sportsman
Pro athlete.
and interrogate him.
Question.
What?
Question, not interrogate.
All right, calm down, Michaela. You're coming off a little thirsty there. Dot and Michaela secure a professional soccer player to interview in a matter of seconds, and they ask him how he managed to achieve perfection. And to the surprise of absolutely no one, he basically tells them that he hasn't.
I'm still not perfect. There's so much for me to work on.
So no matter how much you practice, you're still not perfect at it. And they still pay you.
Okay, I'm still not really sure what Michaela's adding here, but I like her energy.
I don't get it. I thought of all the people in the world, professional sportsmen
Athletes.
would be the closest to perfection. But it doesn't sound like I'm getting any closer to finding a perfect person.
It's Jesus! We all know it's Jesus! Just say that it's Jesus!
I don't think there's a single one out there. Except one.
What?
Seriously?
Who?
Well, have you guys ever thought about Jesus?
Thank you, professional soccer player Ryan Hollingshead. I'm still not entirely sure how this is supposed to help her on her math test, but at least we have some progress. Upon hearing the name Jesus, Dot seems disappointed in herself.
How could I be so careless? I completely forgot to include Jesus as a possible, or maybe even the only probable candidate for the most perfect person who ever lived.
And that almost pisses me off more than if she had been like, Jesus? Who's that? The show makes it very clear that Dot is a Christian child, and having been one of those myself, I can tell you that it's pretty ingrained in you that there's one perfect person, and his name is Jesus Christ. The fact that she had seemingly heard of Jesus and didn't immediately jump to that conclusion leads me to believe that, well, maybe she should be happy with her 92. Up next, Dot has a Zoom meeting with a youth pastor or some shit, and the plucky web detective asks her about Jesus.
Instead of trying to find a secret to perfection, maybe it would help to understand why Jesus was perfect and what that means for us.
Wait, what's happening? How is she doing that? Is she God? If not, this feels very demonic. Also, for those wondering, young Sheldon in the corner there is Alex. He's the cameraman, and apparently he's in every scene, but he doesn't really talk all that much, so I didn't feel the need to mention him. He is one of 3 main characters on the show, though. And yeah, possibly through the use of dark magic, Church Lady transports the kids into a cartoon world where they meet a surprisingly hunky Jesus.
Jesus was a real person, but he was also really God. He wasn't born with the sin nature that the rest of us are born with. It's that nature that keeps us from being perfect. Paul wrote that Jesus knew no sin. The author of the book of Hebrews wrote that even though Jesus was tempted just like we are, he never sinned. That's what I mean when I say he was perfect. Jesus lived a life of total obedience to God.
All right, I get that those snakes were meant to be metaphorical, but I feel like it's not a great metaphor because, like, what was his alternative there? Well, was he not going to use karate to kill them? Like, at least have them holding an apple in their mouths or something. Snakes only make sense as a metaphor for temptation when they're tempting people in some way. Without that, it kind of just seems like the temptation Jesus resisted was getting eaten by a bunch of snakes.
We are imperfect because of sin, and we are under a penalty for that sin, a penalty of death. Our only hope is for someone else, someone with no sin, to stand in our place. Because Jesus was perfect, he could, and he did for each and every one of us when he died on the cross.
All right, this is all well and good, but again, what the fuck does it have to do with a math test? Because lest you forget, that is how this episode started. Connor, web detective, wanted to know how to get a perfect score on her math test, so she tried to find a perfect person to model herself after. Which again, feels like a weird way to go about that problem. I'm not sure anyone would do that unless their goal was to ultimately get to a lesson about Jesus. And don't get me wrong, on the long list of ways that this show could have chosen to proselytize to its audience, a lesson about how they shouldn't feel the need to be perfect all the time is definitely one of the least damaging. Still, I'm not sure that this was the best way to go about that. Like, I get that Christians believe that Jesus was the one perfect person, but I'm not sure that they meant perfect in quite the same way. Obviously, I'm not a biblical scholar, so I may be wrong here, but I don't know that the New Testament ever touched on the Messiah's test-taking abilities. Which is not to say that Jesus couldn't have aced a middle school math test. But presumably so could Dot. That's actually kind of the goal of tests. I feel like the solution to this mystery should have been that Dot should have studied more. And the fact that it wasn't feels a bit sinister to me in a way that I can't quite put my finger on yet. The fact that this mystery was specifically rooted in a math test makes it feel like the show is telling kids, like, don't fill your brain with silly stuff like knowledge, just listen to whatever Jesus says and you'll be fine. I don't know, maybe that's a reach, but there are still 7 episodes of the show I need to watch, so maybe as I make my way through the series, I'll be able to put the deep sense of unease I'm currently feeling in the pit of my stomach into words. One of the downsides of making a video solely to use an AI-generated title is that it kind of forces you to fly by the seat of your pants a little bit. Going into this, my plan was to talk about each episode individually, because since, as I said, the entire series is only 88 minutes long, that felt like a reasonable thing to do. So I watched the first episode and wrote a little breakdown of it. Unfortunately, then I watched the second episode. And every other episode after that. And by the time I got to episode 8, it had become exceedingly clear to me that talking about each episode individually was the wrong way to go about things. I don't think that there would be enough to talk about. But at the same time, I think there would be way too much to talk about. Generally speaking, when I make a video that discusses multiple episodes of the same series at once, I have to keep things a little bit broader. Usually they end up being a bunch of little plot summaries that I do my best to tie together at the end. Unfortunately, were I to do that with this show, things would get very repetitive very quickly. All the episodes are basically the same episode. Every single one of them follows the same strict formula. And I know that because they show us what that formula is at the beginning of the story. We open on Dot facing some sort of dilemma. These are usually fairly common problems that someone her age might deal with.
Alex has stopped talking to us.
It's worse than that. He left me on red.
Although sometimes they are a bit more specific.
I've just sinned too much, and because of that, I don't think that
Think what?
I'll get to go to heaven.
Once they've established the central conflict, Dot will say her catchphrase.
I feel a mystery coming on. You know what that means? We've got a case to crack.
And then we watch her as she suits up and puts on a fedora. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that they do this in every episode.
But I feel a mystery coming on. You know what that means? We've got a case to crack.
Maybe if you're the show's intended audience, you might enjoy it, but for me personally, it got to be a little much. I actually tried to fast forward through it once, but it was one of those things where it was too short, so I ended up going too far and then having to rewind, and it ended up taking more time than just watching it. So yeah, after that, I just suffered through a small headache at the beginning of every episode. Once she's wearing a hat, Dot will turn her dilemma into a case, which essentially means framing what she's going through like a police investigation.
Looks like we've got a mistake of fact on our hands.
In English, please.
It's basically a criminal defense term that means the whole thing is just a big misunderstanding. Alex is ghosting us because he read a different meaning into our text messages. So we need help understanding how to rightly interpret written messages so we can figure out what went wrong.
Seems convoluted, but fun.
It's around here that they usually start laying the groundwork for everything ultimately turning into a lesson about the Bible, since that is the ultimate point of the show. Although given that every episode is presumably built around those lessons, you'd think that the situations they'd use to set them up would feel a bit more related. Frankly, the way this show justifies getting from point A to point B is often a bit of a stretch.
Where do we start?
If we can figure out how to best interpret the Bible, then it'll be easier to interpret trivial things like text messages.
Once we establish the case, we enter into the web portion of .Connor Web Detective, which, generally speaking, is just the lightest of Googling.
That one looks good.
Seriously, that's it. From here on out, everything else is in person. The first result is usually someone who both has some expertise and happens to live close enough to Dot that she and Michaela can go interview them. And this was honestly my favorite part of every episode because the guests on this show suck. The casting director should win whatever the opposite of an Emmy is. I guess just like a tomato in their face. A few were what you'd expect in a kid's show, like that soccer player or that turfy one-armed surfer lady, but most were just random Christian people. If I had to guess, they were all professors, but like the sorts of professors who teach at schools that aren't accredited.
Hi, I'm Daryl Bach, Executive Director for Cultural Engagement at the Hendricks Center and Senior Research Professor of New Testament Studies.
I get maybe saying his name, but it feels odd to me that they take up half the screen giving us his exact title, because I don't think anybody watching this gives two shits about that information. Still, though that man is arguably the least exciting person to ever exist, the show tries to pretend like he's this big get. No matter who it is, whenever they introduce a guest, they always make a big deal out of the fact that this is the actual person they say it is, and not an actor playing them. Even though, like, why would they ever hire an actor to play them?
Hey guys, we're here, minus Alex of course, with Dr. Daryl Bach.
It seems almost like they're trying to trick kids. It feels like if they act like these people are a big deal, kids will think they're a big deal, and then they'll attend one of their speaking engagements, I guess. I honestly don't know what their endgame is here. And on a normal kids show, Daryl Bach, Executive Director for Cultural Engagement at the Hendricks Center and Senior Research Professor of New Testament Studies, would easily be the least kid-friendly guest there was. But here I think that distinction actually goes to someone else.
This is Mr. J. Warner Wallace. He's a former homicide detective who now speaks and writes about Jesus in the Bible.
I guess it's not that weird because presumably it's just set in the real world, but even still, it felt strange getting confirmation that homicides are canon to the .Connor Web Detective universe. Hopefully they explore that a little more in season 2. And I guess this is all just a long way of saying that I'm not sure the people making this understand what kids are interested in. Or if they do, they super don't care. And frankly, I didn't even need to watch the show to tell you that. I could have figured it out based on the title alone. They try to appeal to kids' love of the internet by naming their character .Connor. Kids don't use URLs anymore. That is a very antiquated pun. At this point, it's basically the equivalent of trying to appeal to kids' love of smartphones with a character called Rotary Jones. Once the guests have been introduced, they summon the powers of Satan to transform Dot and her friends into cartoons and teach them a lesson. And then Dot takes that lesson home and sums it up for the audience, effectively closing the case. And like I said, it seems like this is the basis for every episode. Were I to guess, I'd say that the people making this started with the conclusion and worked their way backwards. Like all great mystery writers. And if I'm right in saying that, then it's weird to me that the places these episodes lead aren't better. Like this is where the texting episode ends up.
I need to be careful when I'm interpreting anything that I read, especially the most important historical text message thread known as the Bible. Because the better I can do hermeneutics, the better I can understand what God is trying to teach me. And that's the solution to this case. Good interpretation requires good hermeneutics.
And while not all of them are quite so specific, they are all a bit more advanced than love thy neighbor.
God's still working on me. Genuine Christians are guaranteed eternal life. I can trust God's plan. Jesus is the only way to God. Following Jesus is worth the cost. I don't know about you, but I might be too excited to even sleep tonight.
Which is why I said that there was both not enough and too much to talk about here. Were I to engage with this material on any level deeper than the surface, it would require a much longer discussion. And doing 8 of those in one video feels excessive. That said though, I'm not opposed to doing one of them in one video, so if you want me to discuss more .Connor, like and subscribe and comment and all that other shit, and if this does well, I'll do a part 2. Truth told, a bunch of the episodes are worth discussing. The homicide detective one in particular takes some turns.
I'm not supposed to be on the computer right now, but I've been obsessing over learning interrogation techniques.
I think the weirdest part about how weird this show was is how intentional the weirdness felt. Like a lot of Christian media, it seems very clear that the choices being made here are being made for a very specific reason, but unlike a lot of Christian media, it was not blatantly obvious to me what that reason was. The idea that they had 8 episodes to teach 8 lessons, and these are the ones they went with, makes no sense to me. Or at least it didn't. Unfortunately, then I watched episode 8, and suddenly I had a hunch. I said earlier that a lot of episodes of .Connor open with Dot dealing with some situation that a lot of kids her age will have to go through. This is not one of those episodes.
What's wrong?
Dot, you're not gonna believe this. This is incredible.
Believe what?
Just watch.
You will bring us snacks.
Isaac, what are you...
Boys, I thought you might be hungry.
See, I told you. Isaac has superpowers.
Basically, that boy is in a wheelchair, and his favorite superhero is also in a wheelchair, so he starts to believe that, like his favorite superhero, he has the ability to control people with his mind. And again, out of all possible situations on Earth, this is one of 8 that the show felt the need to address. Rather than just letting this kid have his fun, Dot decides to solve the case of whether it's possible to give yourself superpowers. And from there, the episode plays out exactly like all the others. Dot finds an expert who, in this case, is the wife of a megachurch pastor who, for some reason, watches Dot's videos.
Wait, what? speaker, Lauren Chandler, is a fan of my vlog and wants to help with my case? I'm gonna need a minute, y'all.
And she gives Dot a few Bible verses that relate to the situation at hand.
Genesis 1:27 says that men and women are made in God's own image. And Psalm 139:14 says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made by God.
Isn't there a verse in the Bible about God knowing all the hairs on your head?
Yes, Michaela.
May I?
Absolutely.
So I guess based on this evidence, we can conclude that God determines who we are.
And he's very happy with how he's made us.
So there's no way to change who God made us to be, but we shouldn't have to since he made us the way we are on purpose, right?
Right.
Upon learning that God made us all the way we're supposed to be, Dot returns to her friend and gets way too personal.
Isaac, I know you're a big fan of Dr. Marvel, but he's just a fictional character. And no matter what you do, you can't change the person you already are. And that includes being in a wheelchair.
Dot, what are you talking about?
That's what this is about, isn't it, Isaac?
I've been really discouraged about my disability. I thought maybe I wouldn't be able to achieve some of the things other people have done. I thought if I had superpowers like Dr. Marvel has, even though he's in a wheelchair, then I would be special like him.
Okay, I feel like maybe don't teach kids to blame their disabled friends' problems on some secret shame they feel towards their disability, and unless their disabled friend expressly tells them that that's what's going on. And even then, maybe 3 non-disabled tweens shouldn't be the ones handling that situation. And this is where it started to click for me why this show feels so off. It's not just that it's teaching these weirdly specific lessons, it's that in the process of teaching them, it's actively teaching a lot of bad lessons too. Look back at that texting episode. At no point do they say that Dot should have a conversation with her friend to figure out why he's upset. Feels very clear that the goal there was to introduce kids to the term hermeneutics. Whatever that means. I wasn't really paying attention. And in order to do that, they also teach them to look at texts from their friends as these little mysteries that are open to their own interpretation, which is not only a conclusion that they will eventually reach on their own, but when they inevitably do, it's also going to be the source of a lot of stress in their lives. If I had a kid, I'd want their educational television to teach them the exact opposite. And I feel like the people making this would probably agree with that. But they were just so hyper-focused on hermeneutics that they didn't stop to think about what other things kids might pick up along the way. So then the question becomes, why hermeneutics? Why any of this? I feel a mystery coming on. You know what that means. We've got a case to crack. This was the closest thing to a fedora I had. All right, let's see here. What could Dot Connor, web detective, possibly be trying to do? Wait a second. Dot Connor, web detective. If I get rid of these letters, and I move some things around, and then I add an A for Angel because Christian. Oh my God. How deep does this go? Okay, so maybe that wasn't really a mystery, but watching the last episode, it really hit me what this show's game was. Helping kids navigate what to do when their friend in a wheelchair believes they have superpowers feels very low on the list of potential concerns they should be having. So the fact that the people making this put it so high on their list makes it hard not to wonder if there's an ulterior motive here. And when you think about this one for longer than 2 seconds, it actually starts to feel pretty obvious what that ulterior motive is. I feel like what cemented it for me was this moment right here.
Genesis 1:27 says that men and women are made in God's own image.
Everything I know about modern evangelical parents leads me to believe that the lesson they really want to teach their kids is that they can't be trans. But Doing so would require them to acknowledge the existence of trans people, and that does not feel like something they'd be willing to do in a kid's show or an adult show. So instead, they come up with what they believe is an analogous situation to prepare the kids, so if they eventually realize that they are trans, they'll already be conditioned to believe that that's wrong because God made you exactly the way you're supposed to be. And all the other morals make a lot more sense when you view them through that lens. From learning that the Bible is open to interpretation, to learning that you can't be denied salvation if you accept Jesus into your life. Everything this show says feels designed to mold its viewer into a very specific type of Christian. And if you're watching this, I probably don't need to waste my breath talking about why indoctrination is a bad thing. I've already talked about that and you already know it. But even still, I feel like this show's problems run deeper. Even if I wanted my non existent kids to turn into the exact kinds of adults Dot Connor is clearly trying to create, I don't think I'd want them watching this show because if they are in its intended demographic, that's not who they should be yet. I feel like if I were to write the exact same story as that last episode, my focus wouldn't be so much on the kid thinking he has superpowers. It would be more on the little girl who decided to meet up with the random religious official who reached out to her online because she probably shouldn't be doing that. One day that could be something she does. She could have theological questions and she could meet up with someone she met online to discuss those questions, but only when she has the tools to navigate that safely. Until then, she should focus on developing those tools. And even when the lessons the show teaches aren't potentially life threatening, they're still stupid. Even by evangelical standards. There are a lot of Christian lessons I've seen aimed at children that I don't agree with, but I still get why they're aimed at children. That is not the case with the stuff I saw on Dot Connor. Under no circumstances should you need to bring Daryl Bach, Executive Director for Cultural Engagement at the Hendricks Center and Senior Research Professor of New Testament Studies, onto your kids' show in order to make whatever point you're trying to make. It's too many steps ahead to the point that it starts to feel silly. Even if you think that one day it will be useful, that doesn't mean that you should be jumping straight there. And to be fair, I don't think that this is just a problem with Christians. I think you can see it everywhere nowadays. People focus so much on the future that they lose sight of the things that actually matter in the present. I feel like sometimes we don't value practicality enough. Just because things are simple, that doesn't mean that they're not necessary. And just because something is really advanced, that doesn't mean that it's worth a damn. And normally, this is where I try to tie my discussion back to the beginning of this video, where I talked about how YouTube has started to use AI, but again, I don't want the algorithm to be mad at me, so I'll let you make those connections on your own. And yeah, that's my video. Please like and subscribe and share and comment, and Patreon and members and super thanks. Buy a pro-choice t-shirt. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but I've made 2 attempts at t-shirts. One I made in 2 seconds to sell on Drawfee as a joke, and the other I got drunk and spent $80 on a photo of an old woman, so I had to sell them. And the latter is my bestseller, so I'm gonna link it in the description below. I'll also put a video that I made explaining that whole situation. Also, I'm on a bit of a time crunch today, so I'm gonna wait until next episode to super thanks back. But know that I do appreciate you. And oh, hype me. Also hype me. That sounded awful. I should have at least waited to finish my sentence saying that I do appreciate you. I just have ADD. But yeah, I'm gonna stop talking now. That's my video. Goodbye. Hello. It's time for me to pose with my for my video. And this one I'm gonna do a little behind the curtain. I have a new camera. That's partially the reason why um this is like the way that it is today. I'm figuring stuff out, so I'm really nervous about how this is gonna look. Um, I'm I'm hoping that it's much more. It's placed much lower down on my wall, but so hopefully my eye line's better. I probably should have filmed something before I filmed all of this to check, but I'm an idiot. So these are really big pants. Brunk, 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 brunk. Okay, so like maybe I should move my. I got a monitor that's like big, so I could look at myself, but then I screwed it to the wall, and it's very out of my eye line. So now I can't really look at myself, but if I can't really move it to be behind my camera because if I do, then okay, it's not even if I do, I can't because I bought like a little wall mount, and I do not know how to take it out of the wall mount. And I think the screws to undo the wall mount are underneath the monitor. So if I like my solution was gonna be undo the wall mount and then you can take it, but I can't undo it until I did. I shouldn't be allowed like I don't know. I get this feeling so many times. You guys ever get the feeling like if I were my own parents, I would be taken away from myself? Or if I were my own parents, the government would take me away from myself. I don't know. I suppose I'm supposed to go see a movie soon, so and I'm not really I don't know why. I bought the tickets a while ago, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it because I am very um behind on this. But I don't know why I wanted to see it. It's called The Testament of Anne Lee. And people are like, it's good, but it's also a musical, and I hate musicals. So, like, why are they singing? I feel like I've talked about this before, but I don't know. Maybe I'll like it. I do like Quaker music, and they're Shakers, which is like Quakers. I think it's also what I heard about the story. I tried to find like a book about Anne Lee, and I couldn't find anything interesting. But she sounds. I did what the well. I watched a video. I've been watching a lot of religion videos recently. There's a guy called Religion for Breakfast, which I really like. If you guys like um religion, I've been watching something called Esoterica. And I watched this other guy who seemed nice and normal, but then I went to his Instagram page and he had like some short called like The Dark Origins of Islam. And it's like, okay, I can't support you. And I wouldn't name him because I don't want to call people out like that, but also I don't know his name. Um but yeah, that's the problem with watching Christian videos. I have gone pretty deep into a hole where like if you guys remember way back when I talked about the YouTube channel I watch run by a Franciscan monk, and he seems like a nice guy still, but he is definitely Catholic. Um and every now and then that comes up and I'm like, he thinks I'm going to hell. Oh no. Um but yeah, he still seems nice. And there's one Catholic priest. I don't know if you guys have ever seen him. I think he's more like I see him on like Instagram reels, and he's like this very classically handsome Catholic priest, and he just has the worst vibes I've ever seen. I just know he seems like the villain in a Dan Brown novel. But like he's making TikToks where it's like things I can't do as a Christian priest. Eat a gorilla. No, that's not it. It was something different. Like, but like that's he does that joke a bunch. What am I doing? Oh, posing. Fuck. Dot Connor. Okay, what does Dot Connor mean to me? My hair's so poofy. It's gotten long enough that I should save the sides, I think. So my new system, I need to look up like, and then look in like. It's been a while since I filmed. I've apparently gotten rusty, which is unfortunate because I've never been good at it. What is the title of this video? Oh wait, fuck! I can't change the title because it's written into the video. This. I think that's like classic YouTube, right? Like. I have a weird mouth. I should probably just end it there. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.